Bamfordrose and another question of the week. This week's question is E10 fuel, which is shortly to be introduced into the UK as mainstream fuel, and is it compatible with my Aston? This question is starting to become more popular than what is the best oil for my car. What is the best oil question, the mainstay of any decent forum. Currently in the UK it's E5 for regular 95 unleaded and up to E5 for premium grade fuel. A previous video we shot was talking about the benefits of the ESSO premium grade fuel, because out of all of the branded forecourts, the ESSO was the only one that does not and still does not contain any ethanol. All of the others contain up to the 5% dilution of ethanol. Mainland Europe has been E10 for some time now, and so has the States. So I think the change in this country is that regular 95 will increase to E10. Premium grade fuel will no longer be the term can be up to 5% dilution, and will now change to premium grade fuel being E5. And as far as I can gather from the research I've done, ESSO is still staying 0% ethanol in its premium grade fuel, although the labelling on the pump will say it's E5. If it stays like that, great, there's no change for us. We can just go and fill up at ESSO and we're getting decent petrol. But will the Aston run on E10? The answer is yes, and should be problem free. From the government website, here's a list of Aston models that are compatible with E10, and here's a list that are not. On the list that are not compatible with E10 is the DB7 V12. It doesn't say V12 Vanquish. So this is the classic Vanquish from 2000 to 2007. It's got Vanquish on the compatible models list, and in brackets it's got S, but that surely means Vanquish 2. So the three concerns with E10, or E5 for that matter, is going to be what the concentration of ethanol can do to the components on the car. And in that respect, it's going to be corrosion to metal components that come into contact with the ethanol fuel, and rubber seals, gaskets, or any other gasket materials, cork, which might swell, shrink or crack because of incompatibility with ethanol. The only other risk is going to be from combustion. It's going to make the air-fuel ratio run leaner. So on your Aston, whether it's 04, DB9, V8 Vantage and all the models onwards, whether it's the fuel pump, fuel tank, pipes which take the fuel from tank to the front, to the fuel rail, and any gaskets or seals which might come into contact with a spray of fuel, there is no incompatibility whatsoever on those models. Over the last couple of years in this country, as E5 has become more mainstream, then I have seen, compared to previous years, a lot of DB7 and a lot of Vanquish failing their fuel pumps. So whilst the Aston is compatible with E10 fuel and the car will run no problem, there will be some differences if you ran it on a tank of, say, ESSO with 0 ethanol content. On the fuel where it's purely hydrocarbon and oxygen, the engine will produce more power and the on-throttle responsiveness will feel sharper, the engine will rev up more eagerly. In ethanol, it's going to burn about 2 to 3% leaner, produce less power, fuel economy will be worse, tank range will be less, drivability, on-throttle responsiveness feel a bit fluffy, a bit lethargic. So apart from those differences, there might be a few cars which ping emissions check light on the dashboard more regularly on E10 than what it did do on E5 or on conventional fuel without any ethanol. And here's the reason why. We know that the ethanol will run leaner, and the fueling adaptation control system on the car is going to recognize that, and it's going to enrich the mixture to run the engine at closed loop fueling, which is lambda 1.0 or 14.5 parts air to 1 part fuel. That's called stoichiometric air fuel ratio, and in that closed loop area, particularly cruise. So when you go full throttle, you're in the open loop fuel area, and this is where fueling is going to be controlled for maximum performance. In that closed loop part throttle area, it will learn an adaptation because it's running lean and apply an extra few percent to correct back to lambda 1 if the car is running leaner because E10 is being used. On most cars that will occur and there'll be no onward problem. But on cars that have got a little bit of an air leak, let's just say that the inlet manifold gasket isn't sealing properly. That means that there's unmetered air going into the engine, unmetered air because it's not going through the mass airflow sensor prior to the throttle body. And the fueling adaptation control system on the car caters for that. It realises that there's some unmetered air and it will put you a little bit of extra fuel in to return to lambda 1. So it's already running a fueling offset value under normal conditions. Now you come along and put E10 in the car and it forces that correction value to go further. If that particular engine was already close to an adaptive maximum offset limit, then the requirement to run richer, because E10 is going to run about 2 to 3% leaner, could cause that engine to reach its maximum clamp value, and that will trigger a fault code, and that will be something like a lambda stuck lean code. If you read lots of forums, then you can always pick up many stories where people say that as soon as they travelled from England into mainland Europe, put some E10 in their car, they triggered check engine lights all the time. And something like the scenario that I just discussed will be the reason why. I can just see in years to come that there's going to be lots of renewal of lambda sensors at garages that don't know what they're doing, because they can see an engine light is on the dashboard, the fault code is telling them that the lambda sensor is stuck lean, and they put a new lambda sensor in. When the root cause is nothing to do with an incorrect sensor because the sensor's reading correctly, it's just that maybe there was a little bit of fueling correction needed for that engine anyway, maybe it had a little bit of an air leak. That's what fueling adaptations are there for, that's perfectly normal. And now the extra fueling needed because E10 is running leaner has caused it to clamp out on a maximum amount of fuel override it's got to put in to return it back to the correct controlled lambda 1 value, but it doesn't quite reach it because it's reached a clamp, so it doesn't ever reach lambda 1, so that's why you get this stuck lean code. I can see that getting rid of errors such as these is going to cost owners a fortune, charged by garages that don't really know what they're doing. So if we have to accept this watered down fuel, we know that the car's system, the hardware, can contain the fuel without any problems. We know that combustion isn't going to be as good as what it could be if it was running regular petrol, and the odd car might ping some codes because of problems that I've just discussed. So the fix there will be to get someone who knows what they're doing to remap the ECU so that it is more centered for E10 rather than fuel that you can't buy anymore, meaning that the car is running optimized for E10, not relying on a number of correction factors to return a correct running condition, and therefore eliminate any error lights pinging on the dash because of the E10 fuel. If you take a 4.3 V8 Vantage at cold start, that's going to have secondary air injection coming in to reduce pollutants. When you're on the move, it's going to have a little bit of exhaust gas recirculation. Now you're going to be running that on E10 fuel. If you're at altitude and if you're on summer fuel, which is less volatility than winter fuel, that car is probably going to drive a bit doggy under that situation. So a bespoke remap for that car will really help it out. Let's get rid of secondary air, let's get rid of EGR, center the fuel so it's not relying on corrections to deliver lambda 1. And apart from the loss of power running E10 compared to conventional fuel, then there really will be no noticeable differences. Obviously, the classic car world is in a world of pain from E10 fuel. The tank, pump, pipe work, carburetors are all not going to tolerate the E10 fuel. The E10, in terms of its metal corrosion, is going to harm carburetor floats, whilst the vapor spray of fuel around there is going to harm rubber diaphragms. The only thing you really need to worry about in your Aston is prolonged storage with fuel left in the tank. So in the Aston world, it's not a case of we're all doomed, E10 is coming. It's just a case of a little less performance and a little less range from a tank of fuel. Hope you like that question of the week, and we'll see you on the next one.